here.
Welcome to the show. Thank you.
All right, so let's start with a look at Jewel. I understand that you're Brooklyn born.
Yeah, Brooklyn's in the house.
But with some Caribbean connections, so
yes,
just a little bit of background.
Well, on my father's side, we are Gittins family,
Gittins.
And on my maternal grandfather's side, we have the Goings. So what I figured out, even though nobody told me this, is that the Gittins went to get the Goings, and that's how I got here.
Wow. Spoken like a true poet.
Right.
Why the going was good?
Nobody told me this, but they didn't want to talk about it, but I figured it out.
What are the things that you had to figure out in Brooklyn that prompted you to start writing down your thoughts?
Well, I started writing at a very early age. It's not something that I chose to do. It kind of chose me. And I would often find myself up as a very little child, pick me, as we say in the Caribbean, awakened by these thoughts, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. They still awake me. And finding the need to write. At that time, I didn't know what was going on or why I was doing this. And later discovering literature and reading the works of great writers of all over the world, I began to realize, oh my goodness, this is what I am. This is what's wrong with me. I'm like them. I was like a poet. But I kept the poetry pretty much to myself. Your mother and father, they don't raise you and feed you and clothe you and say, be a poet. No. They say doctor, lawyer, even an Indian chief, but not a poet. So I think that's why I kind of kept it, literally in the drawer for many, many years. And then I ended up in showbiz, working in showbiz. And even though I was working in showbiz, it just never dawned on me to write a book or to share, the poetry.
Or to make any of the connections that you make when you work in showbiz.
Right, no, so it just didn't click. It just was something that I would do on the set. I worked as a model for 20 years. And I would just be on the set and I would write, and I've been in your seat before. I worked as a journalist.
So nobody ever said, what were you always writing there, Joe?
Well, no. I was quiet about it, very shy about it as well. And then finally, I think you reach a point in your life where you say to yourself, who am I? And you start embracing who you really are. And what is it that I haven't done yet? And then the answers were, you need to write this book and get it out there and begin to share it, with the world. And as I started coming forward and sharing the poetry with the world and spoken word, people would come up to me and they would say, thank you. Thank you very much for that poem. Or I began to realize that the power of word and spoken word was amazing, and that you could change the world a little bit, if you will, by sharing it. And so then this is just recent because I just came out, if you will, like last year with the book, and I said to myself, wow, poetry really is born the moment someone else hears it, the moment you share it with someone else. Otherwise it's almost a frozen embryo. Life is there, but it hasn't really taken fruition.
So why don't you share some of this poetry with us? Give it wings and let it breathe,
okay.
And let it inspire us. Because one of the things that clearly we would have had to deal with racial relations growing up in Brooklyn as a child of West Indian parents, and self-determination means something slightly different when you're there from where you are here. So I don't know if you want to give us a bit of background on the two you've chosen, but I'm very
sure. Yeah, and what happened too is, when I was growing up, and I don't want to age myself, so viewers don't do that. Because I tend to people start realizing, wait a minute, the Caribbean community came into New York when, but when I was very young, my father brought me here. And as I've been doing with my daughter now, she's been coming here even when she was on the inside world, and now she's on the outside world, and she knows Barbados very well. I was having a problem with identity. because not everyone in my neighborhood had family members that had an accent like my family members. Everyone was from down south, you know, and we grew up in a predominantly white-skinned area with a few black folks here and there, but, you know, they weren't like us. And so I couldn't understand why. But we would be teased, and we would hear things like, oh, your people came over on the boat, and nothing but a bunch of coconuts. And this is what you would hear, you know, growing up. And so it bothered me, but I would keep it to myself. But when my father brought me here, and I didn't tell them what I was going through, you know, struggling with my sense of identity. We were in a car, and we drove by a road that had our family surname on it. And then we drove by a store that had our family surname on it. And I became very empowered by that, and I said, this is who I am, and this is where my people are from, and I was able to go back to Brooklyn, and I was ready to fight. Oh boy.
Right.
I've been fighting, I think, ever since.
We're running out of time, so give a little bit of the work.
Okay, here's a piece that I wrote. It's called Our Africa, and it goes like this. It's our music from Zaire, rings of calypso sound. It's our mountains, Kilimanjaro, which embraces Harlem's ground. Our drink in Dakar, our West Indians call a sorrel drink. Our dance, samba, merengue, Latin America, shake. Our dance, our culture, our rhythm, our moves, our Kenyan shakes, our Baptist shots, our West Indian wine, our Georgia grind, our praises, our vernacular, our spectacular people in and out of Africa. It's our Africa.
Very nice.
Very nice. Let's have a look at the book, because we will make sure that we get the information from you for the signings. You can get a copy of Sealing Peace. It'll be on bookshelves very soon.
Yes.
3 signings coming up, 2 in December, 1 in January. Before the end of the show, we'll make sure that we repeat that information for you. Never enough time to talk to a talented author such as yourself, but good luck on that continuous journey of self-determination. Thank you for joining us. Jewel Allison is the author of Sealing Peace, a collection of poems on racism.